Welcome to Peers, political economic elemental researchers and strategists. At Peers, we stand as your all-in-one partner, adept at steering you through the intricate realms of politics, economics, and business. Join us at Peers. We're our seasoned team with expertise in politics, economy, business, and law is committed to your success. Together, we will navigate the future, making informed decisions that lead to lasting impacts. Follow us on Facebook, X, and LinkedIn to stay informed about how we can help you achieve your goals.
Previously on episode 23, Pursuing Local Governance Through Realistic Finance.
Ano nga ba ang ibig sabihin na realistic finance? Sa konteksto ng local governance, sa simpleng salita, ito ay pag-aayon sa mga layunin ng lokal na pamamahala at ng estratehiyang pinansyal na praktikal at base sa tunay na kapasidad ng lokal na unit. Mahalaga ito para masiguro ang sustainable development o ang tuloy-tuloy na pagunlad ng isang komunidad.
Meron tayong kasabihan na we cannot spend more than what we make, or we cannot go beyond what has been allocated. In my own personal experience with kay Mayor Kauswagan, who is very depressed municipality, walang pera, what I did was to identify what the people needs. Kasi we have the obligation to deliver the basic services to the government, to the people. It's an obligation of the government. So we need to identify what the people really needs, an immediate need, and how much do we need. Based on that, that is where I based on how we fit in and be able to satisfy the needs of the people. So we make sure we cannot go beyond what has been allocated. But at a later time, nakita ko na we need to be a little bit more flexible.
Yung tanong, ano yung ating pwedeng pamamaraan? At si Mayor, binanggit niya nga, prioritization is key. Sabi nga ni Mayor, hindi ka naman pwedeng gumasta nang hindi mo kikitain. Okay. So kung ang tanong, paano natin magkaroon ng pondo para na hindi naman taas ang buwis? Ang ibig sabihin lang yan ay i-maximize talaga ang iyong collection efficiency ng iyong local sources. Doon ang simula. At maraming LGU ang gumagawa niyan, na without raising the rates, fees and charges, just improve efficiency of collection kasi it's really low, no? I mean, BLGF will tell you on the average the local efficiency is below 50%. Pataasin lang sana 'yon, lalo na sa RPT. So siguro, ewan ko lang kasi 'di ba may bago tayong batas sa real property tax, yung RP-VARA. So, kung ma-implement na yan, which is probably towards the end of the year or early next year, ang LGU ay may sapat na basihan upang palaguin pa, no?
Panahon ninyo sa DILG, natatandaan ko maraming mga grants and projects ang DILG para sa mga LGUs. Meron ka pa bang natatandaan?
Tama ho yun. I think, I don't know kung natandaan din ni Mayor, yung BUB, no? Yung bottom-up budgeting, napakalaki ho nun na yun, straight grant yun sa LGU, sa mga civil society with the LGU agreeing. And it's the post evaluation done by PIDS really confirmed the benefit of that program. I think sa ngayon, mayroon pa naman yung assistance to municipalities yata o SLG, support to local government ang tawag ngayon. May not be the same scale of a program, but it's there. And other barangay-based programs that the department is still providing. So the idea is, hindi lang naman DILG ang may ganyan. Pwede ring ma-access yan ng lalo na ng mga lower income LGUs. Yun yata yung priority ngayon. Oh.
Again, going back to procurement, yes, we do encounter, but as there are guidance on that under the procurement law. So, we make sure lang na hindi kami nakapag-violate dyan. Yun lang, may mga issues once in a while with regards to yung kukulangin ka or Yung wala sa program, and then of course you need to do something with we work closely with our local COA naman in everything that we procure. Yun na lang man ang kami very sensitive with regards to liquidation, with regards to working with COA. Yun.
Pagka nagplano yung mga LGUs at saka pagdating sa annual budget, yung mga tier 1 pala o ano na pwedeng ma-implement kaagad ang bigyan nila ng priority. Ano sa tingin mo, Yosek?
Pwede naman. Although I think the key there is for DILG and DBM to agree. Kasi ang ating basihan si Local Budget Memorandum Circular eh.
Yeah.
Very macro ang pag-define no, na para bang the entire fiscal year is always zero, starts from zero, then in the national government, tier 1 is mostly your continuing programs.
Yeah.
Yan ang magandang siguro innovation diyan, Tony, over time, no. Although I think and so, it depends on what si Mayor Arnado will also to me the annual budgeting is already siguro something to examine eh. Baka kailangan term-based na ang pag-budget. Yung buong 36 months na term ng LGU para may malakihan na pananaw, hindi lang sa annual budget. Kasi napaka-limited talaga ng perspective sa ganon. So kaya nagmamadali palagi kung ano ang pwede gawin and hindi pwede gawin.
Tony, I think the LGUs have to revisit the revenue codes. And nalaman ko medyo old na yung mga hindi na revisit ay yung mga charges nila is maliliit. That's our experience. And then they need to create a good business sense. Make sure na low ang criminality, yung something like that. And then you invite more investors by creating a good business environment.
I fully agree with the mayor. I think the local revenue side of this has to be really maximized, no. Ang dagdag ko lang dyan, I think yung paghandaan na ng mabuti. I was talking to a group of assessors last week eh. Kailangan na nilang paghandaan itong bagong batas na pinasa, yung RP-VARA. Hindi siya madali kaagad. I think the IRR will come out next September. So after publication, go na yan. So I think by early next year, that's really the one that is in effect. Paghandaan na yan kaagad para mabilis yung pag-implement along the lines of what the mayor has said, no. Kailangan mong i-maximize yung provision ng law.
Magandang umaga, good morning to our peers viewers, to our co-peers, and the general public watching Peers in Town Hall. My name is Aaron De Leon, and I'm your newest millennial peer. And this morning's episode has been in the news for the past several weeks. But before we proceed any further, just allow me to greet everyone a pleasant Sunday morning. Maligayang Pasko sa inyong lahat. Unang araw ng Setyembre. At dito sa Pilipinas, ang unang araw ng Setyembre ay nagsisimula ay senyales ng pagsisimula ng panahon ng mahabang Pasko dito sa Pilipinas. So I'd like to greet you a Merry Christmas. So this morning's episode has sparked interest from several groups, from several people, and the ordinary Juan de la Cruz. But before we proceed any further on our interesting episode this morning, there have been recent political developments of which our group, the Political Economic Elemental Research and Strategists, would like to take key positions on these issues. And as part of our advocacy, we are issuing what we call as peer reviews. So these peer reviews are statements on pressing issues which affect the ordinary Filipino and are drawn from the collective expertise and experience of our members. So we have members from the economic sector, we have members from the legal profession, we have members from the business sector, and we also have esteemed political experts and analysts. So just allow me to read the recent statement of peers in connection with the incident last week at the Kingdom of Jesus Christ compound in Davao, where there were several claims of violation of constitutional rights. And as a group, Peers has come up with a statement which collectively encapsulates our views as a group pertaining to this warrant of arrest issued, this deputizing of PNP officers at the KOGC compound, and the ruling of the Honorable Regional Trial Court of Davao in relation to this incident. So let me just read in verbatim the peers review statement, clarifying the RTC order, ensuring constitutional rights and the rule of law. The order of the Honorable RTC Davao, which granted the petition of the members of the KOGC, does not in any way lift the warrant of arrest against televangelist Kiboloy and other sect members. To be clear, the order to the PNP is only to seize any acts that threatens the basic constitutional rights of the petitioners, and thus directed to remove all forms that may block or bar access to and from the subject compound. Every citizen must subjugate themselves under the rule of law, especially those who are tasked to enforce it, as this is the fundamental concept that ensures a just and equitable society. So there goes your statement of our group, the Political Economic Elemental Researchers and Strategists, with regard to clarifying the RTC order, ensuring constitutional rights and the rule of law. And let me just put it out here as a disclaimer that this statement may not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of the guests of this episode. But they are free to clarify, of course, later on if they wish to. So that is the statement of peers. So having mentioned that or having stated that in our episode, let's go to our episode for this morning. And this episode is a bit catchy, as we call it from the millennial spheres. No? We call it the 64 peso day challenge. Saan ba aabot ang 64 pesos mo kada araw? And this was popularized by one of the, the ice cream commercials. I think that was back in 1 or 2 decades ago. Yung saan aabot ang 20 pesos mo. So we have decided to take this topic on because it has piqued the interest of not only experts but also the ordinary Filipino. Now, just as a background for everyone's benefit, no? So during the first day of the Senate hearing on the proposed 2025 budget, the National Economic Development Authority or NEDA Secretary R.C. Balisacan cited that individuals who spend 64 pesos below for 3 meals a day are considered food poor. Now, this is based or drawing from a study by the group in 2023 that the monthly threshold for a family of 5 is 9,581 pesos, which comes to around 64 pesos per person. So it is said to have increased actually from where it was in 2021 at about 55 pesos per person. Now, during the same briefing, the NEDA emphasized that it was the Department of Health, Food and Nutrition Research Institute who actually determined the food basket and what constitutes a reasonable one that could meet the nutritional food requirement, which by its own admission has not been updated sometime. So we have 2 guests this morning who would be able to help shed light on the issue. perhaps capture the sentiments of the sectors that they represent, and more importantly, how it has been communicated and how it is perceived by the groups that they represent and by the general public. So we have this morning two esteemed guests, two working professionals. No? So let me introduce our first guest this morning. So he is a researcher and program officer for the Action for Economic Reforms. And he has been a member of the group of the fiscal policy team since 2019. The group mainly focuses on enacting fiscal reforms, including tax measures and other economic policies. So he is also a member of the Akbayan Economic Research Group, and he graduated magna cum laude with a Bachelor of Science in Economics from the UP School of Economics in 2015. So ladies and gentlemen, allow me to welcome our first guest, AJ Montesa. AJ, bati ka muna.
Good morning, Aaron. Good morning to our guests. Good morning din sa lahat ng nakikinig at nanonood. So, I'm happy to be here and hopefully we have a good and fruitful discussion on this issue.
Maraming salamat, AJ. No? So, punta naman tayo sa ating ikalawang panauhin, our second guest for this morning. He is an associate professor at the De La Salle University Tañada Jokno School of Law and a senior lecturer at the University of the Philippines College of Law. He also happens to teach currently at the Tarlac State University School of Law. He is a former commissioner of the Legal Education Board and served as a director at the Office of the President of the Philippines. And he didn't mention it in his profile, but he was named one of the 10 outstanding students of the Philippines back when he was studying. No? And he also holds a degree in psychology from the De La Salle University. So ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome Attorney Justin Sukgang. Hi Justin, good morning.
Hi brother, good morning. Magandang umaga Aaron. Magandang umaga po sa lahat ng nakikinig sa atin. Magandang umaga po, magandang araw ng linggo. And dating ko na lang din ang aking asawa at ang aking firstborn na anak na si Juancho.
Ayan, oo nga pala, may bagong panganak si Attorney Justin, so hindi ko pa nababate. Congratulations on your baby. Punta muna tayo sa no, bago tayo mag-init dito sa topic na to. Nabanggit ko kanina, no, I mentioned earlier this study about that was a broadcast, no, on different platforms. No? Na-mention nga itong 64 peso per day food threshold per person. No? Ano yung initial insights nyo, AJ, Justin, nung narinig nyo to? What came to your mind based on your backgrounds, and what do you want to tell our people initially about this study by NEDA? So let's start with AJ first.
Yes, thank you, Aaron. So I think ang initial reaction ko, I would say I'm sympathetic to the people who reacted to the 64 peso a day. Unang-una, it's not an imposition by NEDA that people should live on 64 pesos a day, no? Pero of course, still, I think people cannot believe that 64 pesos is already a benchmark for saying na hindi ka food poor. I think really it's coming from people's day-to-day experiences. Almost 3/4 of Filipinos find that inflation is a growing concern in the country. This is based on the latest Pulse Asia survey. And according to SWS surveys also, more than half of Filipinos would identify as poor, which is a lot larger than the figure issued by the PSA, which is around 10% lang. No? So, malayo ang objective, quote-unquote, measures ng poverty versus ang subjective measures of poverty. Marami ang nagpo-perceive na nahihirapan sila. So, I think it calls into question if the metrics used by the NEDA are sufficient, no? But at the same time, I also sympathize with the NEDA because actually yung methodology na ginagamit nila is yung method that they've been using for the past few decades already. It's a method that is also accepted globally. No? So if you look at institutions like the World Bank and how they measure poverty, very similar ang benchmarks natin sa kanila. No? So if you look at the way that they measure poverty, yung poverty line din nila na ginagamit in the global context, halos similar yung sa atin at sa kanila. No? So we can go deeper into the numbers later sa discussion natin. Pero at the same time, I think it's good to maintain some consistency with the methodology para natatrack natin yung progress natin over time. But at the same time, I think that can be balanced, that can be more sensitive to the actual day-to-day realities of the people if we designate, for example, an alternative poverty line that is a bit higher. So maybe we can go deeper into that. But yun yung initial reaction ko at the outset.
Maraming salamat, no? So AJ has touched on relevant studies na, no, and the benchmarks. So ito, puntahan natin yung mga benchmarks na ginamit on the timeliness of these benchmarks and how it relates to the study that was recently done by NEDA. So punta naman tayo kay Justin, Attorney Justin. Justin, what's your view when you first heard of this this news item?
Well, for a lack of better term, BS. It's absolutely BS. But again, yung first source ko of the information is really yung mga news. So, syempre, kapag balita yan and second-hand information, it's being reported. So, parang I feel na dapat I should be cautious. So, even if some news outfits are considered reliable, pero syempre, baka may problem with the way how they reported it, yung interpretation nila. Plus the fact that it was from NEDA. So, if you look at I've worked for the government for a good number of years, and I've served under 2 Philippine presidents. And ang head ng NEDA is si RC. So I think na medyo he has served under 3 presidents, I think. Nag-start kay Pinoy, nag-doon kay Duterte, now under Marcos Jr. So I don't think hindi siya ganun mapolitikang tao. So medyo I would think na reliable siya, credible siya. He's an expert in his craft. And in fact, sa dissertation na sinusulat ko ngayon, I've cited him a good number of times. So mukhang hindi naman siya gagawa ng medyo kabalastugan, for lack of better term. Pero pag tinignan mo talaga, if you look at it from the perspective of an ordinary person, anecdotes are very powerful. Ito siguro yung sinasabi kanina ni AJ na the objective markers and indicators of poverty versus the subjective ones, yung experience ng tao. And anecdotes are very powerful. Pag sinabi mong, if you've crafted the message na 64, which is around 21 pesos per meal, talagang BS yan on many, from the perspective of many people. Pero if you look at it, ano ba yung talagang, syempre may technical definition yan, yung threshold na sinasabi ng NEDA. So pag inaral mo naman yun, which I don't think a good number of people will have the time to do so, parang maniniwala ka naman. Pero, and that's why, let's leave it to the experts then, like AJ, to enlighten us what NEDA means by that. But beyond that, I think it's also incumbent upon the government to really effectively communicate kung ano yung sinasabi nila. Kasi pag technical at hinaluan mo ngayon ng experiential na side ng tao, talaga magbabangga yun eh. And always I will tell, lalo na kung galing ka sa government, anecdotes are very powerful. Mahirap kalabanin yun. Even if yung sinasabi mo ay facts or statistics, pero ibang-iba sa personal experience ng mga tao, talagang mapapamura sila.
Ayun. Thank you for your interesting insights, Justin, on several layers, no, with your experience in government, how you perceive it as an ordinary person, no. So maraming nabanggit na mga related studies, no. In fact, in one of the statements, no, yung DSWD is saying that they are actually looking at food poverty in a different lens or in a different sphere. So I'd like to, with your experience, Justin, unahin kita, with your experience working in government, diba? There are a number of agencies, basically, usually maraming agencies under a certain cluster who look at poverty, for example. What's your experience in terms of government agencies using different sets of data to analyze a common parameter such as poverty? And what is your experience on, tawag dito, how these agencies are working together to come up with one voice, no? Kasi typically narinig natin minsan sa gobyerno, they say different things about a certain topic. So minsan masasabi ng mga tao, gawa kayo ng chat group nyo para mag-align naman yung mga understanding nyo. So how do you see these conflicting statements, let's say between DSWD, NEDA, with your experience in the government?
Well, tama ka doon, brother. Kasi ang pinaka malaking sama ng loob ko sa gobyerno nung nagtatrabaho ko, I work under OP. And OP is parang, we should have a bird's eye view of everything. Yun naman disenyo niyan eh. Lahat, papaakyatin mo sa presidente. If kailangan ng kanyang approval, then you have to get approval. So we vet it, we check, tama ba to? Sino bang ahensya yung dapat nagsasabi ng totoo? Minsan umaabot sa ganon. Sino ba yung, kanino kami papanig? Or baka parehas mali? O what should be the correct policy? Malaking sama ng loob ko hindi nag-uusap yung mga ahensya ng gobyerno. Well, at the very least, I could say hindi nag-uusap yung mga boss. Kasi nandun yung ego eh. Wala na ako sa gobyerno, kaya I could freely say this. So, kasi pag tinignan mo, yung mga staff, yung mga technical staff, usually, magkakabaro yan, nag-uusap yan eh. Diba? Meron kahit paano may Viber group yan eh. Siguro yung mga boss may Viber group yan, pero they don't use that often. So wala talagang mahirap na ang nangyari, parang may sasabihin yung isa. So I haven't worked, haven't dealt with yung poverty per se. So I couldn't say with much accuracy na, okay, ito yung ginawa. I've worked with NEDA before several times, pero more of the infrastructure. Pero yun sa poverty, hindi ko yan na nahawakan at all. Pero in terms of other government, let's say, parang metrics, talagang karamihan dyan hindi nag-uusap. So yung staff, minsan kahit yung staff hindi na rin nag-uusap eh. Kasi parang, in government, may turf war. So kanya-kanyang munting kaharian yung mga bawat departamento ng gobyerno. So may sasabihin yung isang secretary, tapos biglang magulat ka yung isang secretary, sasabihin niya iba naman. And ang nagiging problema, pansinin nyo, lalo na kapag medyo political yung isang department, or yung kasi minsan may mga department talaga na we just deal with statistics. Parang we try as much as possible to be objective. May iba naman na political talaga department. Merong iba naman na kahit hindi political department, na po politika kasi yung ulo ng departamento ay may interest, may political interest. So talagang magiging ang tendency ng mga ito, nagiging populist. So, katulad doon, remember yung sa PhilHealth dati, yung hinindihan ni Pinoy na taasan yung contribution. Pagdating kay Duterte, bigla, okay, taasan natin. Tapos bigla nagkaroon ng problema kasi parang may mali-mali mga computation. But the point is, pag naging masyadong populist na, devoid of, ito yung sinasabi kanina ni AJ na yung objectivity, through yung statistics, through numbers, na mahirap questionin. Well, syempre, maki-question mo doon yung method. Pero yung numbers per se, parang mahirap questionin yan. Pag yun ang pinairal natin, baka mas madali tayo makagawa ng polisiya. Pero kapag pinairal mo ng ego, tsaka siyempre politika, lalo kung may interest yung isang tao, then magkakaroon talaga ng problema. Kaya ganun yung tendency nagpaiba-iba. So ang pinaka-importante, dapat merong yung Office of the President o yung Presidente mismo, para siyang may baston siya. He acts as if na, okay, we're one government. So kung hindi rin ganun ka-powerful yung communication secretary, more likely, magkakaroon ng kanya-kanyang message yung bawat department ng gobyerno.
Oh, that's pretty good. That's spoken from experience, no? I think yun sa experience, it just allowed him to immerse working with the different agencies, no? Being with OP. Meron lang akong phone-in question dito from our Facebook Live, no? AJ, if you could shed light, no, on this. This is a bit on the economic side. Is this metric, the metric that was used for this study on food threshold, different from the measurement of poverty incidence, or the method or the process at arriving at poverty incidence in the statistics?
Yes, very good question ito, no? So, medyo magkakaiba ang konsepto ng threshold at ng incidence. So, I want to walk through those concepts with you and the audience. No? So, number one, yung pinag-uusapan natin na 64 pesos per day, yun yung tinatawag na food threshold. According sa PSA, yun yung minimum income or expenditure required for a family or individual, or in the case of 64 pesos, it's the minimum requirement for an individual per day to meet the basic food needs, which satisfies the nutritional requirements for economically necessary and socially desirable physical activities. So para siyang minimum requirement para mabuhay ka just for food, no? Yung tinatawag na subsistence incidence, minimeasure siya using the food threshold. So ang ginagawa ng PSA ay binibilang nila lahat ng tao na nabubuhay na ang income nila ay below the food threshold. So na-explain kanina na yung food threshold, the way that they designate the food threshold is may research na ginagawa ang FNRI. What they do is they designate a basket of goods. No? Think of a grocery basket or a small basket of food items na yun yung mag-meet ng daily calorie requirements ng isang tao. So for example, 2,000 calories. And then may consideration din yun kung ano yung nutritional requirements. And then what the PSA does is, bawat probinsya kasi iba-iba ang konteksto, iba-iba ang presyo, iba-iba ang food availability, no? They will try to identify the food items that meet the minimum requirement that are available and accessible to the people. And then they will measure the prices. So every time that they do the survey, the family income and expenditure survey, they will measure how much that basket of goods would cost in each province. And then they will count the number of people who are living below that or at that level. And that's what they use to measure subsistence incidence. No? So, iba yung food threshold at yung subsistence incidence dun sa poverty threshold and poverty incidence. Dahil yung food threshold, ang kinakonsider lang niya ay yung minimum food requirements. Ang poverty threshold, ang kinakonsider niya ay yung basic food and non-food requirements. So, kasama na dito yung mga cost of living na bukod sa pagkain. Halimbawa, yung cost ng rent, yung cost ng transportation, yung cost ng electricity and other things, no? So, yun yung tinatawag na poverty threshold. So, kadalasan, ang poverty threshold ay mas mataas doon sa food threshold. So, for example, kung ang food threshold ay nasa 63, 64 pesos, ang poverty threshold naman ay 91 pesos per day, 91 to 92 pesos per day, no? So, yung measurement ng poverty natin, who we consider poor, is based on this higher poverty threshold naman. So, ang tinatawag na poverty incidence is the proportion of families or individuals with a per capita or per person income less than the per capita poverty threshold, the proportion of that to the total number of families per individuals. So I hope I answered your question.
Malalim eh.
Yes.
You helped me actually on this, no? Kasi when you say metric, paano ba ipe-perceive yan ng ordinaryong Pilipino? So I think AJ, you were able to laymanize all these terms and explained it to our viewing public, so to speak, no? So I'd like to since there was a mention of the relevant studies, or we have been trying to delve into this study by NEDA. Actually nag-come up ng clarification ang Philippine Statistics Authority, no, doon sa kanilang method na ginamit. So they clarified that the least cost method approach, or the lowest possible cost to arrive at the menu or the food basket was used to determine yung food basket, no. So if we can just our colleagues from the production can show yung infographic on how to estimate per capita food threshold. Perhaps again we'd like to get the views of AJ after I go through this slide, no. So if I might just from our production team, nakapost na ba ang ating infographic para lang matulungan nating mga kababayan na mas maintindihan papaano ba sa hilatsa ng gobyerno na ipaliwanag kung papaano nag-arrive dito sa 21 pesos per day. So production team, please, can you flash it on your screens? Ayan na. So makikita ninyo yung infographic on how to estimate per capita food threshold, no? So just an explanatory note, no? So based on the per capita food threshold from the PSA, the sample food bundle covering breakfast, lunch, and dinner would provide 100% energy, 123% protein, 119% calcium, 80% iron, 131% vitamin A, 88% thiamine, 80% riboflavin, 239% niacin, and 106% vitamin C. Now, the sample breakfast was composed of, makinig kayo sa mga nakikinig dito, yung 64-day challenge. Tignan nyo kung pasok to sa panlasa nyo. Scrambled egg, coffee with milk, and boiled rice or corn mix. So yan, try natin yan bukas, ha. Try nyo. Okay. For lunch, the sample was boiled munggo with malunggay and dried dilis, banana, and boiled rice or corn mix for lunch. For dinner, the sample food bundle consisted of fried fish or boiled pork, vegetable dish, and boiled rice or corn mix. Nabanggit din ni NEDA Secretary Balisacan na itong kinam-up na to maaaring luma na o matagal nang hindi na-update. So I'd just like to get your thoughts, AJ, on what you've seen on the screen and the explanation of PSA on this least cost method approach.
Yes, so actually itong least cost method approach, no, this is very standard now for the past decades na ito na yung ginagamit ng PSA natin across different administrations. It's not unique to this year. Yung Family Income and Expenditure Survey, ginagawa ito ng NEDA since 1991, I think every 3 years, and starting in 2023, gagawin na siya every 2 years. So this is very standard and very similar nga siya to the threshold na nilalagay ng World Bank. So for example, in the World Bank, merong tinatawag na extreme poverty, and ang measurement nila ng extreme poverty is around $2.15 per day in purchasing power parity. Ang katumbas nun ay nasa 57 pesos per day actually in 2023. So itong food poverty, medyo similar siya sa World Bank na threshold, no? So I don't really question the validity of the model in terms of methodology, but I think I get where people are coming from nga. Because remember, what we have to understand what this metric is trying to measure. It's not measuring what every Filipino should live by. It's not measuring what the average or the median Filipino should live by. It's trying to designate how do we measure poverty, no? So, kailangan natin bumalik sa more philosophical discussion. Ano ba ang ibig sabihin ng poverty? What does it mean to really be poor? According to the United Nations, no, maraming definitions ng poverty. This is how they conceptualize it. Poverty is a denial of choices and opportunities. It's a violation of human dignity. Poverty means a lack of basic capacity to participate effectively in society. It means not having enough to feed and clothe a family, not having enough to go to school or a clinic to go to, not having the land on which to grow one's food. It means insecurity, powerlessness, and exclusion of individuals, households, and communities. So philosophically, medyo mahirap talaga sabihin, what does it mean to be poor, no? Maraming Pilipino, they could be earning a high income, but then they don't have access to these things. Still, it is very important to measure poverty because yung measurements natin ng poverty, they're one key performance indicator of the government. They're one metric na masasabi natin na effective yung trabaho ng gobyerno. So for example, if bumababa yung poverty, masasabi natin na nagiging effective yung trabaho ng NEDA, ng DSWD, ng Congress by enacting laws that are targeting the poor, no, or helping the poor. So it still is important to measure poverty. So it goes back to the problem. Paano ba natin susukatin kung sino ang mahirap? The approach that NEDA or the PSA does is it designates an absolute poverty line, again, which we explained earlier na decide tayo na may isang basket of goods na if you cannot afford that basket of goods, that very basic basket of goods, you are considered poor. And above that, you're not poor anymore. It doesn't mean that you are well off. It doesn't mean that you are in a good standard of living. It just means hindi ka poor. So yung food poverty na 64 pesos is just the basic food requirements, and yung higher poverty threshold na 91 or 92 pesos is the rest of the non-food needs as well. No? So I think the criticism that people also have is, number one, I think we need to update it nga because the cost of food, nag-iba na rin yung standard of living natin, yung food na nakalagay dito, baka hindi na reflective yun, no? Of the actual cost of food, the cost of other needs that are required to also obtain the food, no? So it doesn't take that into account as well. So I think yun ang isang magandang discussion point, no? We have to disentangle yung concept ng food threshold sa actual experience ng average Filipino. So supposedly malayo talaga ang average Filipino versus the really poor na tinatawag na Filipinos, no? And again, hindi siya normative statement. Hindi niya sinasabi na Filipinos should live on this budget. Hindi niya sinasabi na ganito dapat ang pag-iipon natin, ganito lang dapat ang gastos natin para hindi maging mahirap, no? Ang sinasabi niya ay the way that we will count the poor is ito yung minimum threshold, and lahat ng tao na below this kinoconsider natin na mahirap. So we can consider increasing the threshold. May iba't ibang alternatives tayo. We can discuss that later on. No? But I think yun yung magandang starting point also to have this discussion.
Thank you for your extensive explanation on this graph and what lens we should use in at looking at these different figures. No? So Justin, I'd just like to get your view, no, on how you perceive it from based on your background in psychology or background in government, seeing this infographic and seeing the suggested plates per meal.
Well, if you're going to look at it from the perspective of common people, parang buti nga merong pictures may mga larawan Pero kung titingnan ko yung numero, wala akong pakialam dun Kasi pag tinignan mo ang plataforma de gobyerno ng administrasyon ito na sasabing Bagong Pilipinas, there's what you call as yung mga symbolic na communication. So may mga symbols na pinapakita at gustong iparating nung administrasyon na nakaupo saan ba nila gusto dalhin yung Pilipino. So kapag sinabi mong Bagong Pilipinas, syempre may luma. At ano ba ibig sabihin nila ng lumang Pilipinas? So siguro may kagutuman yung Pilipinas na mga Pilipinong walang oportunidad na magtrabaho kahit gustong-gusto at kating-kating magtrabaho, hindi makahanap ng trabaho. Pilipino na gusto man lang na makabili ng mga at least yung mga basic na pangangailangan nila. So siguro, yun yung lumang Pilipinas na itanim itong simbolo na parang Bago Pilipinas. So bago ngayon, dati luma. And obviously, pag sinabing bago, siguro naman mas gusto nila mas maganda or may positibo yung pagbabago. Hindi naman bago na mas pumangit, na mas dumumi, mas sumirap. So kung yun yung nabubuo na imahe sa utak, sa imahinasyon ng mga kapwa nating Pilipino, tapos lalataran mo sila ng 21 pesos na budget kuno. Kasi yun yung pagka-report sa media. Ang kailangan mo lang na budget, 21 pesos. So wala namang nuance sa pag-report sa media. Of course, merong mga media outlet na nagsabi, okay, food poor. Pero pag binasa ko yan, food, pagkain, poor, kahirapan. So, and then you combine that with the power of how powerful anecdote is. Ba talaga pagtatawanan ka ng mga kababayan natin? For example, dito sa Makati, dito kung saan ako nakatira, minsan maglalakad ako para naghanap ako ng murang mabibilhan. Jolly Jeep. Siyempre, ayaw ko sa mga restaurant kasi pag restaurant, baka 500, 600 na yung restaurants dito, yung presyo ng mga bilihin doon. Pupunta ako sa Jolly Jeep. Yung isang meal na, lalo na dito, sisig sarada. So, hingi ka na lang na sponsorship dyan, brother. So, yung mahilig ako sa sisig, bibili ko dyan. 70, 80 pesos na yun At malit yun, kakarampot lang yun. Parang kailangan ko bumili ng 2 orders para mabusog ako. So, ibig sabihin, kung ganun, 60 pesos, tas sasabihan mo kami, lalataran mo kami ng 21, talagang magugulat kami. Plus the fact na pag sinabi kong poor, as opposed to rich, pag poor, gutom. Pag rich, busog. So kapag busog ako, pag sinabi kong 21 pesos, ibig sabihin, hindi ko na, ang pagkalatag kasi is, kailangan mo ng 21 para hindi ka maging mahirap. O at least in terms of pagkain. Pero ang nakapinta sa imahe ng Pilipino, yung 20 pesos na yan yung minimum na amount para ako mabusog. Which is definitely not true. So, kapag sinabi mo 21 pesos, kailangan mo okay na yan para mabusog ka. Mahihirapan ka talagang ipatanggap yon sa mga Pilipino kasi kulang na kulang. Plus the fact na yung mga kaninang mga nutrition requirements, yung mga riboflavin, yung mga niacin, baka tapos if you've been using that for decades ago, baka tama yung sinabi ni AJ kanina after ng pandemic, baka nag-iba na yung dietary requirements ng mga Pilipino, baka kailangan na natin i-adjust. Baka dapat mas mataas siguro yung vitamin C, baka kailangan magdagdag ka ng mga ibang vitamins or minerals dun sa listahan. So ito yung sinasabi ko kanina na I trust that NEDA is competent and apolitical as much as possible. So when it comes to the result, I would think that it's objective. But the problem really is yung, in the end, it's the methodology. Kung nagtutugma ba yung methodology sa gusto mong sa sinasabi mo ngayon. So parang, for example, in psychology, meron tinatawag sa psychometrics. There are two characteristics usually kung maganda ba yung test. It's number one is yung tinatawag namin na accuracy or yung precision, and then pangalawa is yung reliability. So yung accuracy is, pag sinabi mo, kunyari, sa aking background sa bar exam, yung bar exam ba, does it really measure what it intends to measure? So kapag sinabi mo ba na, pag kumuha ako ng bar exam, ang sinabi mo, kapag pumasa ng bar exam, magaling na abogado. Now, are you telling me na kapag pumasa ba ako ng bar exam, under its current state, or any exam for that matter, magaling na ba akong doktor, magaling ba akong abogado, kaya ko na mag-practice? Pangalawa, reliability. If I'm going to take it tomorrow or the day after that, pareho dapat yung resulta. Now, if you're going to measure this kind of threshold dun sa dalawang characteristics na yun, so itong methodology na yun, I think magkakaroon ng problema. Kasi una pa lang, does it really measure what it intends to measure? Are you really measuring yung food poor? So baka hindi. Yung mga nutritional requirements, baka hindi na. So dapat i-adjust na. So we're not really, I'm not really questioning yung intention ng NEDA dito. Baka nga lang, sa kagustuhan, na pwede rin kasing mapolitika, sa kagustuhan na maipakita natin na mas kaunti yung mahirap, hindi natin binabago yung pang-measure. Which is problematic. In fact, sa batas din, like sa labor law, ganun din yung nangyayari sa minimum wage. Gusto natin mababa. Ano ba yung minimum wage na kailangan as opposed to living wage, di ba? Parang okay, yung minimum para lang maging isang kahig isang tukaka. Pero yung living wage is gusto mo naman medyo may ginhawa. So kasi kung yung lumang Pilipinas ay sobrang problematic, sobrang nakakapagod, siguro naman yung bagong Pilipinas pwede at the minimum i-expect ko may konting ginhawa. Pero kung minimum wage sila like 600, pag pumunta ka sa ibang bansa, sa Amerika, let's say it's $15 per hour, pagpunta mo dito sa Pilipinas, yung $15 mo ay pang isang araw, magugulat ka talaga, parang hindi yan nakakakamit ng ginhawa, hindi yan nakakakamit ng kaunti man lang nasaya sa buhay. Kasi maiikot ako, paulit-ulit ako, nandun ako sa trap na kailangan magtrabaho kasi isang kahig isang tupa. So walang ginawa doon. So very important kung paano i-communicate talaga ng government. Yung symbols, lalo na ngayon dahil ni-require ng gobyerno ng administrasyong ito, dapat bawat logo, bawat slogan ng mga departamento ng Pilipinas, kailangan nakakabit yung bagong Pilipinas. So paulit-ulit to sinasabi, bago to. And yung bago na yun dapat pas maayos. At kung yun ang ginagawa ng gobyerno, questionable talaga yung nangyaring, magiging questionable yung resulta nung statistics na ginawa ng NEDA at ng PSA.
Thank you for that very broad take on the matter, Justin, using yung psychology background based on your legal background, and also on the branding of the government, Bagong Pilipinas, and how it relates to their strategies, no? I think by its own admission naman, sinabi naman ng NEDA talaga na although itong food basket was adjusted for inflation, they need to actually revisit yung food basket to ensure na one, yung food preferences are taken into account, and then of course the relative price of goods and other things are considered, no? So I think by their own admission, no, alam nilang kailangang may update ito. In fact, during that hearing, si Senator Poe, no, was very very expressive in her view that yung timeliness ng mga ginamit na mga indicators dito ay kailangan i-revisit ng NEDA. And by its own admission, si NEDA naman, sinabi niya na yes, they will revisit this. So, I'm sure you're familiar with yung Millennial Development Goals, no? And one of the cornerstones or one of the underscoring principles under the MDGs is yung eradication of extreme poverty and hunger. My question to you is on that higher plane, no? How do these studies, no, like itong recent study ng NEDA, how does it help our government plan its strategy in terms of eradicating extreme poverty and hunger? One, in relation to, as mentioned, no, nabanggit ito sa national budget. So how much One, how much does our government need to spend to bolster its research and development capabilities? And second, yung ultimate goal basically itong it ma-address itong food poverty, so to speak. So I'd like to start again with AJ. What's your take on this?
Yeah, so it's a good question, no? I think dito tayo, kaya mahalaga na pag-usapan natin yung metrics na ito. What does it actually measure, no? So maganda yung point ni Justin kanina na does your metric really adequately measure the concept that you're trying to find out, no? So ang goal kasi ng government ay by the end of the term, maging 9% na ang poverty. And based on the existing metrics, nasa 10, a little bit above 10% tayo, mukhang on track tayo, no? Based on their statistics. But again, that leads us to question, sapat na ba yung amount na iyon? Does that really meet the vision of what a world free from poverty is, no? So I wanted to give some alternative measures, no? So for example, kung ang 64 pesos ang currently na ginagamit for food poor and yung poor na threshold ay 91, may alternative. For example, yung United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, they do some studies also to measure the cost of a healthy diet. So hindi lang siya minimum requirement, it's actually the cost of acquiring food na masagana, masustansya, na that's good for the body and sustainable din siya, no? So based on that, if we calculate some of the figures, ang actual cost of a healthy diet, food pa lang is 104 pesos per day, no? So it's more than double hindi naman double, pero it's almost double the subsistence, and it's above the poverty threshold. If you factor in non-food costs, ang estimate ko ay nasa 140 pesos per day na yun per person. So again, this is a measure, just one alternative measure of poverty. If you take that number, you can take a similar number, for example, if you measure the number of Filipinos who are living at a daily rate of around 180 pesos per day. So this is double the poverty line, no? 180 pesos per day. Around 50% of Filipinos live below that, no? So still, even if you have reported metrics na parang 10% ang poor, you can go to the realities on the ground, you can designate some alternative measures or statistics or metrics, and you find out na actually ang karamihan ng Pilipino, half of Filipinos still live at a standard of living that would be considered low income or even poor to some Filipinos. Kaya nga, may ibang surveys din na ang method nila ay hindi sila choose ng arbitrary na amount. For example, yung social weather stations or yung SWS, ang ginagawa nila, tinatanong lang nila mismo yung Pilipino, sa tingin mo ba, ikaw ba ay mahirap o hindi mahirap? So hindi sila nagsasabi na this is your income or this is your amount. Ang finding nila lately ay more than 50% ng Pilipino ay nag-identify as mahirap, no? Ibig sabihin nun, dahil sa pagtaas ng presyo ng pagkain, mas nakakaramdam ng kahirapan ng mga Pilipino. And I think it goes back again to measuring how well the government is doing a good job. So for example, na-mention kanina ni Justin yung vision ng administration na ito sa Pilipinas. One specific policy direction was gusto sana maging 20 pesos ang kilo ng bigas, no? At the start of the term, that was the promise of President Marcos. By now, almost 2 years into the term, no, ang presyo ng bigas ay hindi bumaba ng 20 pesos. In fact, tumaas siya from 39 pesos ngayon, 50 pesos na ang isang kilo ng bigas in most places. So that also goes to contributing to the fact na karamihan ng Pilipino ay mas nakakaramdam ng kahirapan. So what I would say is although the metrics right now, they show you na on track or on progress, if you dig deeper, if you actually analyze the data, may indicators din na nagsasabi that we're not actually better off, that we're in the same place as we were. And the government does need to do a better job in targeting yung issues na ito, no? And diluting the numbers does not actually help them to identify what programs would be effective.
And thank you, AJ, for looking at it on that aspect, no? Yung even suggesting yung 104 pesos per day, looking at that figure potentially as a closer to reality figure, no? I'd like to ask Justin, no, on the R and more on the research and development side of government. Kasi budget season ngayon eh. Tingin mo ba kulang? Kailangan bang dagdagan? Kailangan ba nating mag-encourage ba ng mas maraming mga tao, mag-hire ng maraming experts para, or do they have the existing pool of people in the government? It's just that yun nga, there are coordination issues, or there's a question of kumbaga yung indicators na ginagamit kailangan bang update. What needs to be done, one, so that the research and the researchers that come out from the government are actually more responsive or more attuned to the times, no? Updated, and then the way they are communicating these things are clearer, and then mas grounded yung information na lumalabas ng government.
Well, I don't think it's just a matter of communication Kasi if it's only purely communication and then ayos naman yung backend, yung behind the scenes, mararamdaman ng tao yun hindi mo maloloko yung mga tao So I think there really is a problem with the programs. And the only way for you to do that is really to spend on research. Pero kung may gobyerno ka na galit, or at least may mga ibang senador na galit sa research, mahihirapan ka talaga, di ba? Kasi you really need research. And the problem with the Philippine government is what I call is, from my perspective, I might be wrong, right? It's laissez-faire approach to policies. Karamihan, when I say laissez-faire approach, bahala na, kanya-kanya tayo. Nagiging he says, she says. Yung sinasabi ko kanina, the power of anecdotes, common to all people, or yung the general masses, it also plagues our government officials. So meaning to say, parang isang opisyal sa gobyerno, sabihin ko, gusto ko tong proyekto na to. Gusto ko to. Tapos may magsasabi na isang ahensya, hindi tama yan, mali yan. And then syempre magbabanggaan yan. Ang problema kung wala kang research, wala kang datos, ano yung pang filter mo doon? Ano yung pang balance mo? Sino magsasabi ng totoo? Sinong nagsasabi ng totoo? So in the end what happens is it's he says versus she says. Mabuti na lang may NEDA. Kahit papaano merong semblance of objectivity. Diba? Parang we try as much as possible through NEDA na parang they try to make it objective. At least may figures. Para when you say this, at the very least, meron ka, you're backed up by numbers. Pero napapansin ko talaga sa gobyerno na the government usually relies on think tanks. Pero wala yung mga in-house na competent na research na centers na dapat they should be provided. Kasi kung puro think tanks ka naman, may mga ideological bent yan Pero kung meron kang in-house na mga research centers, then I would say that the government, at least they are backed up by some data. Kasi important, yung kanina sinasabi namin ni AJ, it's very important to know how you compute or how you calculate something. Kasi when it comes to policy, at the ang standard talaga is it should be evidence-based, or at least evidence-informed. Problem sa Philippines, wala halos At the very least, in other government agencies, di ko nakikitaan na ano ba yung basis for saying na ito yung gusto mong proyekto. So parang nangyari lang, siguro nagising si Department Secretary, parang ito yung nanaginip ako, ito yung gusto kong gawin. Parang yun na. And then walang basis at all. You really have to spend on research. And in fact, there are studies in other countries na parang there's correlation between how much the government spends in R&D in proportion to their GDP dun sa national development. Kasi the more you do research, the more makikita mo may problema. Or at the very least, the more makikita mo na may tama kang ginagawa, and that will really help you create better policies. Yung policies that are more targeted and responsive. Hindi lang yung parang pampapogi lang. Hindi lang yung purely populist na policy. So, you really have to spend, number one, on research. And then number two, so after spending on research, syempre dapat yung implementation. So, you have some numbers, dapat may implement So even if the government has so much funds, buhos yung pondo, or kahit umutang ka, meaning to say may pondo ka pa rin, kung wala naman ding maayos na implementation, ito yung naging problema nung dating administrasyon, yung absorptive capacity ng mga departamento. Bubuhusan kita ng 50 billion. Ang kaya mo lang kasi, dahil hindi ganun ka-competent yung mga tao, or for the longest time, nasanay ka sa maliit. Kaya ko 1 billion. Binuhusan mo ng 50 billion, sumabog ako, hindi ko talaga nagamit yung kalahati niyan. Remember, like yung mga bombilya, kung ang voltahe ng bombilya mo ay 5 or yung wattage niya ay 5, pinadaanan mo ng 100, talagang sasabog yung bombilya niyan. And in the same way, ganun din yung mga government agencies when it comes to implementation. So binigyan ka dahil bumuhos yung pera, tumaas yung ekonomiya, maraming pera, nagkaroon ng PPP, nangutang yung gobyerno, maraming pera ngayon yung mga tao, yung gobyerno as a whole, and even yung department agencies, nagkaroon siya ng 25 billion, ang nagastos ko lang 1 billion. Sayang yung 24 billion. Hindi ko na-implement na maayos. And remember, yung 24 billion na yun, binigay ng Kongreso yun. Meaning to say, they guaranteed na magkakaroon ka ng 25 billion because you represented that you have you have activities that you have to spend on, computed noon aggregate niya 25 billion. And if you don't spend the 25 billion, meaning to say, most likely, hindi ka nakapag-implement ng proyekto or hindi mo na-implement na maayos. So that's number 2. So yung research and then yung implementation ng projects. And then number 3, I think impact studies. Wala akong halos nakikita sa gobyerno. Usually, ang gumagawa niyan mga private na buhos tayo ng buhos ng pera. Siguro, I think yung 4 Ps meron na. Yung Pantawid Pamilya, may marami nang gumagawa ng studies dyan. But for other projects ng gobyerno, meron bang impact studies? For example, nagtayo ako ng Skyway, ng mga infrastructure projects, like Skyway o mga tulay, naibsan ba talaga yung traffic? Naggawa ako ng ganitong proyekto na mga job fair, nagkaroon ba talaga ng trabaho yung mga tao? So those 3 things, I think, are fundamental in governance. A research to provide you with numbers and to provide you with at least an insight on what do you need to do, or ano ba yung parang gap, ano ba yung problem area na pwede kumpunan. Pangalawa, you should implement it. So competent people, hopefully regular people in the government, hindi puro yung plantilla na pupuno o hindi nire-reserve yung plantilla sa mga ka-close mo. And then pangatlo really is yung impact studies, just to measure kung tama ba yung ginagawa mo. And then after that, you reassess. Kung di kumalit, you can create new programs or tinker with the existing programs. And then lastly, number 4 pala, communication. The government should be able to communicate, lalo na kung maayos yung kanilang nagawa. And when you talk about communication, ito yung medyo mahirap. Kasi kahit matino yung gobyerno, kung hindi naman ganun kagaling yung communication sa office, then magkakaroon ng problema. In the same manner na kung hindi matino yung gobyerno, pero magaling yung communication sa office, may problema din. So I think those are the 4 things that our government needs para talaga to implement or to do, so that they could help millions of Filipinos that are climbed out of poverty.
Those points are very well taken. No, I think it captures yung sa whole R&D program, and then yung mga dapat gawin inside government to ensure na nagiging responsive at na i-communicate properly yung mga programa natin. Tulad na lang kung ano yung mga sinasabing mga poverty alleviation strategies, no? And we were actually hoping, no, this morning to invite the presidential advisor for poverty alleviation, pero hindi daw siya available. So anyway, it's good that si AJ, no, has a message me, and he would just like to comment on the budget or spending and implementation issue. So it's a good thing, AJ, na that you wait for the host to recognize you before coming in. So puti tayo dito, may semblance of civility tayo kaysa sa Congress. Anyway, go ahead, AJ.
Yeah, actually, thank you. Speaking of Congress nga, no, one trend that we're noticing with the budget, no, ever since the start of the pandemic, tumataas yung allocation for ayuda, mga ayuda programs, no. So nandito yung 4 Ps. But yung 4 Ps kasi, established na ito, well-researched na ito, but there are other forms of ayuda na nag-popularize after the pandemic. For example, yung MAIP or yung medical assistance, yung TUPAD ng DOLE, yung AIX ng DSWD. So these are various forms of ayuda na nag-emphasize na ang gobyerno. So for example, yung budget ng lahat ng ayuda programs na ito, I'm just mentioning the 4, no? 109 billion noong 2019 before the pandemic. Ngayong 2024, 228 billion na, no? So more than double supposedly ang spending natin on ayuda programs, which might be all well and good kasi targeted supposedly ito sa mga mahihirap. This should alleviate poverty. This should help people get better access to education, to health. The problem is, napansin ko din ay sa implementation ulit, no? Itong mga programs na ito, there were news reports last year na ginagamit itong ayuda as an incentive to sign a petition for charter change, no? So one problem that we've identified also is not just the budget that's allocated for these programs, but how these programs are implemented. Ang problema kung bakit minsan hindi na alleviate yung poverty ay napopoliticize din siya. So many of the households that are poor can be excluded because hindi sila sumasang-ayon or hindi sila na nag-agree dun sa local politician or even the Speaker of the House. And ang tendency, for example, ay yung pag-distribute ng budget ay hindi nakadepende sa datos, hindi nakadepende sa research, as Justin pointed out. Minsan nakadepende na siya sa political consideration. So that's very, very, I wanted to point that out right now. This Congress in particular, si Speaker Martin Romualdez has been very, very blatant, no, in his use of the budget to allocate based on political objectives rather than data-driven or economic objectives. And I think that's a problem that also needs to be addressed head-on.
Ayun, thank you. No, so again, ang dami nating napag-usapan, no. AJ has gone through the intricacies ng mga studies in relation to other studies. Then Justin has provided us a multidisciplinary view, no, from the lens from the government in his experience, and then also from his psychology background, and also his legal background, and most importantly, yung naging experience niya with the government, no. So that was what we have been trying to encapsulate in this episode, no. Different views, different perspectives, no, just for us to understand what goes into such studies as this, no. So probably as a final statement, no, let's put ourselves in the shoes of our policymakers, or let's put our feet, no, in the position of naman yung mga legislators natin. So if you were a legislator or if you were a policymaker, how would you want, based on this number, how would you want the government to address this issue at a policy level or at a program level? And then if there's any budgetary anecdote you'd like to have, like how much of a percentage of GDP should be allocated to R&D. So those things para lang makatulong tayo sa ating mga policymakers. Let's start with Justin siguro for this time.
Well, I think the government should be more parang mas palawakan yung imahinasyon eh. Parang if we stick on to what we've been doing for the past decades, just like pag-measure on the current measurement of poverty as we know it right now, then that will, I think, we perpetuate yung paulit-ulit na cycle of yung violence and poverty, or at least economic violence sa Philippines. What's important is parang the government should have this parang vision talaga na ano ba yung gusto ko na Pilipino? Na ano ba yung, pag sinabing ikaw ay Pilipino, ano ba yung dapat meron ka? Ano ba yung nararamdaman mo? Ano ba yung nakukuha mo? Ano ba yung napapakinabangan mo? And I think pag binasa mo naman yung himno ng Bagong Pilipinas, nakalagay naman doon, may part dyan na sinasabi nila na panahon ng pagbabago, gawin ng pagbabago patungo sa pag-asenso, magsikap na mabuti at nang guminhawa tayo. And I think yung keyword ko dyan palagi is yung ginhawa. So, but it's really subjective. Lalo na ngayon sa panahon ng TikTok at ng Instagram, yung ginhawa at yung hindi ako mahirap, talaga nakabase ako na nakikita ko sa mga mayaman, may yate. Wala ako yate, so mahirap ako. So, nagiging subjective yan. Pero at the very least, there should be some, when you talk about ginhawa, hindi naman in general, yung mga Pilipino naman, hindi ganun talaga na parang, hindi ganun yung pagiging inggitero, I think. So parang, at alam nila, marunong lumugar. So kahit pa paano, pag tinanong mo, in general, pag nag-compute ka, nag-survey ka, may lalabas at lalabas dyan na konsepto. Ano ba ibig sabihin ang ginhawa sa common ng mga Pilipino? And yun dapat yung gawin na basis ng gobyerno. And dapat we should imagine, we should be more imaginative when we compute for those things, measure those things, and then address those problems based on our calculations. And then lastly, how to evaluate. Kasi paulit-ulit ko sasabihin na ang problema sa Pilipinas, lalo sa gobyerno, wala impact study. Madali tayong kumuha ng pera, nakakahanap tayo ng pera, nakakautang tayo ng pera, bubuhos natin yung pera sa mga proyekto. And then after that, akala natin dahil may pera, okay na. Nabuhos mo na yung pera, ang problema walang pera. Pero doesn't mean na nasolusyonan mo talaga yung problema. So kahit may pera, kung walang kwenta yung pagpaplano, kahit may pera, kung hindi naman maayos yung pagpapatakbo, sayang yung pera. At yung pera hindi napupulot. Lalo na sa Pilipinas, madalas inuutang natin yung pera. So kung yung gobyerno natin, we consider ourselves, yung mga tao sa gobyerno, we consider ourselves as stewards ng pera ng mga taong bayan, siguro mas magiging maayos yung mga proyekto natin kung may ganun tayong mindset tayo mga sa gobyerno. So I think yun lang yung masasabi ko right now. At least we have AJ here who's more when it comes to technicalities, alam na alam niya. Pero at least from a broader perspective, yun yung kailangan ng gobyerno talaga. Vision talaga na ano ba yung bagong Pilipinas? How do you envision that? Pangalawa, that imagination should trickle down on more better tools, calculate tools methods and to compute and calculate yung mga problema natin. Pangatlo, dapat ma-implement natin na maayos yung proyekto. And then lastly, yung impact studies. Kasi doon mo makikita how resilient the government is. Kung nakita nila na may problema based on the impact studies, and then very quickly na solusyon na nila, merong how do I say this? Parang may design thinking approach, parang hindi ka lang, mas madali ka mag-recover, then mas makakapag-solve tayo ng mga problema. Pero kung laging mabagal, kung yung lumang pag-iisip pa rin yung pinapairal natin, I think paulit-ulit lang yung magiging problema kahit na sino yung maupo na presidente.
Thank you very much, Justin, for that, for capturing the sentiments of a certain segment of society, and again hammering on the point of government focusing on evaluation studies just to assess the effectivity of existing government programs and policies. AJ, your final thoughts on the last question.
Yes. So to be fair, again, to NEDA and to the government, I think technically sound naman ang method na ginagamit nila, But I agree with Justin na kailangan din i-harmonize yun sa lived reality and even sa imagination ng mga tao. So what I really would suggest is, aside from doing the usual poverty estimates na for the longest time ay in line with global standards, in line with the usual methodology, I think we can complement that by also measuring alternative measures of poverty. We can have a higher poverty line, or have a higher line that we can measure the incidence of. So that would give a better picture. Again, in line ito sa mga surveys ng SWS na nagsasabi na around 50% ng Filipino perceive themselves to be poor. So that's one thing. Measuring properly will help you to design good policies. We cannot have good policies without proper measurement, without proper key performance indicators. Pangalawa, I think sa issue naman ng budget, kailangan holistic yung approach natin sa pag-allocate ng budget to address poverty. Na-mention pa nga kanina yung United Nations definition of poverty. Hindi lang siya issue kasi ng income o ng kita, di ba? Issue din siya sa access sa education, sa access to healthcare. So we need to make sure na yung budget natin, hindi lang siya napupunta halimbawa sa ayuda or sa infrastructure na ang middle class kadalasan ang nagbe-benefit. We should make sure that the low-income households are able to access education, quality education, para makaahon sila sa kahirapan. Dapat may access sila sa good healthcare, para whenever they get sick, hindi catastrophic ang impact sa kanila ng illness. So those are things that also factor into poverty. We should take care of our workers, yung concept ng livable wage, na hindi lang minimum needs ang nami-meet natin, but a wage that will allow people to flourish and to live and with human dignity. And of course, we have to take care of different sectors, like yung mga farmers, fisher folk. Sa agriculture, yung poverty rate nila ay mas mataas, di hamak dun sa national poverty rate. So those are issues that we need to address. So aside from allocating a budget there, it's also a matter of being more competent in the government and eliminating some of the politicization. So for example, in agriculture, na-mention ko yung agriculture, how competent has our Department of Agriculture been in addressing the needs of the agriculture sector? Because yung cost ng pagkain really falls squarely on the mismanagement of the agricultural sector, kaya hindi na meet yung pagbaba ng presyo ng pagkain o ibang bilihin din. At the same time, yung Congress has to eliminate really the politicization, na bring up yung issues ng pork barrel ulit, because they've been inserting it in not just the ayuda but also in infrastructure projects. Kung sino ang mas malapit sa powerful na like for example the speaker or the president, sila kadalasan na nakaka-receive ng infrastructure budget. So instead of targeting based on kung sino yung nahihirapan or kung saan yung areas na nangangailangan, minsan nata-target siya based on politics, and we really should do away with that. Dahil nagko-cause din siya ng ibang issues. One issue in the budget right now is babawasan pa ng PhilHealth ng 90 billion dahil nagkulang yung budget. So yung management issues like this, they all feed into poverty, because this impacts the way that Filipinos can not just earn money, but also access basic social services like education and health. So I think there should be a holistic approach. There should be an approach that takes into account not just the income of people, but really the holistic human dignity. And we should have proper metrics that reflect that, so that yung government natin, they can be data-driven, research-driven, and also competent, and they should not politicize yung issues such as this. So yun lang ang final thoughts ko. Maraming salamat.
AJ, maraming salamat. Attorney Justin, maraming salamat sa inyong mga magagandang pananaw, puro-puro base sa iba't ibang perspektibo, trying to capture the imaginations of people on the ground, trying to dig deep into your experiences in economics and research, trying to look at it from the perspective of being in government, seeing things as it is, and how government can improve the way they do research, how they can improve to communicate the messages so that it is clear and it comes across, no? So on this topic, no, 64 pesos a day, it has sparked a national conversation. It has ignited not only the interest of political parties or political groups, but it has also piqued the interest of ordinary Filipinos, to a point that ordinary Filipinos have come up with their own TikTok videos, YouTube challenges, just so to challenge this notion that you can have 64 pesos a day as your food budget per person. But what it should actually drive our policymakers or even us is to for us people to become more engaged into this national conversation. How do we get our feet in government in terms of saying 64 pesos is not enough, or whatever you're doing in terms of research, it's not being communicated properly. So it's time to put that talk into the walk. How do we get to engage people, our lawmakers, into, okay, look at our situation on the ground, look at other realities on the ground, because it seems from what we are getting from these conversations is there's a disconnect between how this message came out and how people have perceived it. So it's time to address that disconnect, not just on a communications level, but on a governance level. How do we bridge that gap so that people will be able to relate to the next time how government sees how it is to be food poor? Para pag nagko-communicate tayo sa mga tao, tinatanggap ng tao kung ano yung mga nagiging pag-aaral ng gobyerno at hindi nila nakikita kung gaano kalayo ang tao sa gobyerno. And lastly, again, I'd like to thank the guests for sharing their multiple insights. And this is the kind of conversations we should be having as we move to the critical juncture again of our political history, our elections. Ilang buwan na lang, magpa-file na naman ng certificate of candidacy ang ating mga senador, ang ating mga party list groups, and even our local leaders. It's time, because poverty is one key issue that governments of each and every administration would have to address. And until now, hindi pa rin malinaw, perhaps to many people, ano ba yung poverty alleviation strategy talaga ng government? And who are these people in the Senate or in the Congress that could champion programs and policies that could really alleviate poverty? So it is time for us to re-examine, no, how we view these issues and who do we actually put in position so that these kinds of research and development questions are addressed adequately when the government agencies submit their budgets, and how R&D fits into this entire government budget as a percentage of GDP, what should be the percentage, no? And how much allocation should be given to these different agencies that are conducting researches, no? So mahalaga itong mga conversations na ito, and our group, the Political Economic Elemental Researchers and Strategists, would continue having these discussions with our audiences on various topics or on various issues. So ngayon, AJ, Justin, again, maraming salamat sa inyo sa pagpapaunlak nyo sa aming imbitasyon ngayong umaga. And we will see you in the next couple of weeks for your Peers in Town Hall series. So my name is Aaron De Leon. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next week. Maraming salamat. Maligayang Pasko ulit sa ating lahat ngayong unang araw ng Setyembre.
Recording stopped.